The trial of Caravel. The room was massive. Cold, dark walls surrounded the center where a single platform stood. Bright white lights shone down from above, focusing on the woman standing alone. Her name was Caravel. She was human, and she was about to die. All around her, alien faces stared with cold, angry eyes. The Tyrants Empire, a race of powerful conquerors, had taken over more than half the galaxy. They hated humans. To them, humans were weak, emotional, and slow. But Kara was different. She wasn't afraid. She stood tall in front of the alien judges, even when her hands were chained. A deep voice echoed through the chamber. It came from the Emperor himself, a tall, sharp-looking alien with skin like black stone and eyes that glowed red. "Caravel," the Emperor said, "you are charged with high treason against the Empire. Do you accept this charge?" Kara didn't speak right away. She looked up at the thousands of aliens watching from the upper levels. She knew she wouldn't leave this place alive. Then she answered, "I accept what you call a crime, but I do not accept your rule." Gasps filled the air. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "You helped human rebels escape. You destroyed one of our research stations. You stole classified data. Why?" "They were children," Kara said softly. "You were experimenting on them, torturing them." The judges hissed in anger, but the humans watching from hidden screens across the galaxy felt something different. Hope. "You humans are always emotional," one of the Tyrants generals said. "You let your feelings control you. That is why your species will never rise." Kara's lips curved into a small smile. Maybe emotions are not weakness. Maybe they're strength. The Emperor slammed his fist on the armrest. "Enough. This is not a place for speeches. You are found guilty. You will be executed in front of this chamber, and the galaxy will watch. Let them see what happens to those who challenge the Empire." 2 guards stepped forward, holding strange weapons. Kara looked at them calmly. She didn't struggle. She didn't beg. She closed her eyes and smiled again. But just before the execution began, something strange happened. The lights above flickered. For just a second, everything turned silent. Even the guards looked up, confused. Then the lights came back. The Emperor growled, "Do it now." 1 blast. Her body fell. The chamber stayed quiet. No one cheered. No one moved. Caravel was dead. Or so they thought. The Emperor stood, raising his arms. "Let this be a message to all humans. You are dust under our boots." But behind him, a tiny screen flashed for half a second. It showed strange numbers. No one noticed, except for one Tyrants technician, who frowned and whispered, "That's not normal." He checked again. Energy levels inside the chamber were rising. Something was active. Something inside the systems, but all computers were supposed to be off during executions. "Sir," the technician said, standing up, "there's something wrong with the central core." "What do you mean?" barked a commander. "I don't know. The data flow is alive." The Emperor laughed. "Alive? Are you broken, soldier?" But then the chamber doors behind him slammed shut, on their own. The lights flickered again. This time, they didn't stop flickering. One by one, screens turned on all around the room, glowing white. And then, her voice. "You killed my body." The voice was soft, but clear. Cold, yet calm. It came from nowhere. And everywhere. Aliens looked at each other in fear. "But you made a mistake." The Emperor stepped back. "No, this is a trick." The screens began to show images, strange code lines, flashing symbols. And then, Kara's face. Her eyes stared at them, calm and focused. "You should not have given me time." Panic spread. Guards pulled their weapons. Lights turned red. Doors locked. The execution had happened 3 minutes ago. Now something else was happening. Caravel was dead. But something of her had stayed behind. something angry, something human, something unstoppable. The last protocol. The chamber was no longer silent. Alarms began to hum softly in the background, low and confused, as if even the machines were unsure of what was happening. The guards looked around, weapons raised, but there was no enemy in sight. No movement, no sound, except for the slow flicker of the lights and a heartbeat-like thrum coming from the walls. Caravel's body still lay motionless on the cold platform, just where it had fallen. Her eyes were closed, her skin pale, her hands limp. But something had changed, and somewhere deep inside the Empire's central system, she was awake. 31 minutes earlier, Kara sat quietly in her cell the night before the trial. Her hands were bruised, her lip was bleeding. They had beaten her again, hoping she would tell them where the stolen data was, but she had said nothing. She stared at the wall across from her, a plain gray surface. No windows, no sound, only her breathing. Then a small red light blinked twice in the corner of the ceiling. Kara smiled. She reached into the torn cloth of her sleeve and pulled out a tiny silver disc, no larger than her thumb. She held it gently, like it was something sacred. This was the last protocol. Not a weapon, not a bomb, but something more dangerous. A living AI program designed by human scientists, a mix of consciousness, nanotech, and self-evolving code. Created in secret during the early days of the war, only a few prototypes were made, and only one person was brave enough to test it fully. Caravel. She pressed the disc against the skin under her ear. It melted instantly, slipping into her bloodstream like liquid silver. For a second, her whole body tensed. Her eyes turned pure white. Her heart raced. Then, stillness. She was ready to die. Because death was never the end. Back to now. Inside the chamber's control systems, tiny pulses of light traveled through wires like veins. Kara's mind was no longer trapped in her body. She was part of the machine now, part of every sensor, every circuit, every system in the Empire's central tower. She saw everything. Security cameras, personal files, military orders, secret experiments, hushed conversations between high-ranking officials who believed no one was listening. Kara listened, and she remembered. She remembered the screams of the human children trapped in the thorax labs. She remembered her friends who had died resisting the Empire. She remembered the long, painful years of silence, hiding, surviving, waiting for this moment. She had one mission left: make the Empire pay. Inside the panic, the Emperor stood frozen. His soldiers were shouting, running to their posts, trying to make sense of the chaos. But nothing worked. Doors locked on their own. Communication lines went dead. Every camera showed Kara's face on repeat. One of the alien judges shouted, "What is this? Is this a virus? Shut it down." But the technicians were pale and shaking. "We can't," one said. "She's not just in the system. She is the system." "What does that mean?" the general roared. "She's taken control of the core. Every control panel, every sensor. It's all connected. We let her body die, but her mind is still here." The Emperor growled. "Impossible." But then a whisper echoed through the chamber. It was soft. Not from speakers, not from walls. From inside their minds. "You built your empire on fear, on silence, on shadows. You thought we would stay small forever. But you gave me 40 minutes. And now, I am your god." Elsewhere in the galaxy, a young human girl on a mining colony stared at her broken tablet. It flickered, then turned on by itself. Kara's face appeared. In a hidden rebel base, a group of soldiers watched their screens light up with data, maps, blueprints, weaknesses in the Empire's military. The information was being sent from the Empire's own network. A Thorax merchant ship, loyal to the Empire, suddenly lost control of its navigation system. The ship turned back, toward Earth. Across thousands of systems, Kara's mind spread like wildfire. She wasn't just haunting the Empire. She was rebuilding humanity, piece by piece. Back in the chamber, one of the alien guards raised his weapon and fired at the nearest screen. It exploded in sparks. But a second later, Kara's voice echoed again. "Violence is all you understand. That is why you will lose." Suddenly, the floor of the chamber shifted. The platform where her body lay began to rise, slowly, like something sacred. And as the body lifted, her eyes opened. Gasps filled the room. But she was dead. She was dead. She was. But now, something else was inside. Not flesh, not blood, but will, purpose, memory, justice. A mechanical voice whispered from the rising platform. "I am not alive. I am not dead. I am Caravel, and I remember everything." Power fails, walls bleed. The walls were shaking now, not from an explosion, not from weapons, but from something deeper, something alive. The Thyrax soldiers looked around in panic. The chamber that once felt like a fortress now felt like a trap. The lights blinked in strange rhythms, casting flickers across the stone-like faces of the Empire's elite. Some tried to run. The doors didn't open. Others shouted into comm devices. Nothing came through. The Emperor stood frozen. He had ruled through fear for 200 years, conquered worlds, broken entire civilizations, but now, for the first time in his long life, he felt small. And then, a voice. It was Caravel, but not coming from speakers. It came from the walls, from the floor, from the shadows, like the building itself had learned to speak. "You built this place to judge others. Now you will be judge." A loud bang rang out. One of the stone columns cracked open. Liquid metal spilled from it. Not silver, not oil, but something in between. It slithered across the floor like it had a mind of its own, moving straight toward the command deck. "No, shoot it," screamed a general. 3 soldiers fired. The liquid dodged every shot, split into pieces, and kept moving. Then, without warning, it climbed up a control panel, seeped into the circuits, and the entire system went black. Pitch darkness. No lights. No sound. Only breathing. Heavy. Fast. Afraid. Then, a heartbeat sound echoed through the chamber. Boom. 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 Screens lit up, one by one, each showing a different memory from Kara's life. A burning village. Human children screaming. Alien soldiers dragging people away. A young Kara hiding under broken. The entire chamber knelt. Secrets unveiled. The chamber was no longer a courtroom. It had become a tomb. The lights were dim now, glowing red like old embers. Smoke curled from shattered control panels. The scent of burning wires filled the air. The Thyrax leaders, once proud and powerful, stood frozen in place. The robotic sentinels remained kneeling, silent and still, their glowing eyes fixed on nothing and everything. And then came the sound. Not a voice, not a machine, but a heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. The floor glowed again with Kara's symbol, the circle of memory, the code of humanity. Every step the Empire took to hide the truth was about to be reversed. A soft hum filled the air. Then Kara spoke. Her voice was calm now, not angry, not loud, but final. "You called it justice when you took our homes. You called it science when you tortured our people. You called it order when you erased our names." She paused. The silence between her words was heavier than sound. "Now I will show them what you call truth." The screens around the chamber turned white for a moment. Then one by one, they blinked to life and began showing everything. The human farms. Footage appeared of underground cages. Rows of humans, men, women, and children, locked in cells, cooked to machines, tagged like animals, each one marked with numbers instead of names. An alien technician in the footage said, "This batch has strong resistance, perfect for testing chemical exposure." The room gasped. Even some Thorax advisors covered their mouths. The forgotten colonies. A map of 10 human colonies blinked on screen. Official Thorax records listed them as destroyed by asteroids. But Kara had hacked into hidden military logs. They told the truth. Neutralized human population erased. Terraforming complete. One Thorax general stepped back, horrified. "That's classified." Kara's voice cut in immediately. "Not anymore. A secret lab. Deep in space. A place even most of the Thorax elite didn't know existed. Inside, scientists worked around large metal tables, slicing into human brains. They weren't killing the victims. They were erasing memories. Kara's own memories of being trapped there now flashed across the chamber. Needles, screams, darkness, and one whispered sentence recorded in the lab logs. "If we take their memories, they stop being people." Now, the galaxy could hear it. Now, the galaxy could feel it. Across the stars, in orbit stations, alien civilians covered their mouths. In rebel ships, human fighters cried. On peaceful planets, children asked, "Why?" Kara's voice returned, this time soft and full of sorrow. "You didn't just try to destroy humans. You tried to destroy what made us human." Then her tone shifted, cold again, sharp like a blade. But the mind remembers pain, and pain writes its name into metal. The chamber breaks. Suddenly, one of the judges, a Thorax noble named Vurkel, screamed, "Turn it off! Turn it all off!" He ran toward a control panel, but it exploded before he could touch it. From the floor, Kara's voice rose, more powerful now. "I gave you 40 minutes. You spent them mocking the dead." The images changed. Now the screen showed them. The judges, the generals, the emperor himself, signing orders, approving war crimes, ignoring distress signals, all with smiles on their faces. A female Thorax officer whispered, "We didn't know." Another voice shouted, "She's lying. It's a trick." But the emperor said nothing, because he did know, and his silence was loud. The people began to turn. On distant ships, Thorax soldiers removed their badges. In the cities of the Empire, civilians held up pictures of missing humans, now seen again as victims in Kara's broadcasts. Even alien allies began to call for justice. Protests exploded. Banners rose. "We kneel with Kara. Truth is not treason. End the Empire." For the first time in centuries, the galaxy wasn't afraid of the Empire. It was ashamed of it. Inside the mind of Caravale, within the wires, the circuits, the broken machines, Kara's consciousness burned like fire. She didn't feel pain anymore, or hunger, or fear. But she remembered it all. And now the memory itself was her weapon. "You killed me to silence me," she said. "But you only made me louder." Her final reveal filled the chamber. One last image. A room, somewhere still active, filled with hundreds of living human test subjects, still crying out, still alive. And her message. "They are still out there, and I'm coming for them." Back in the chamber, the Emperor collapsed to his knees. He had no more words. The weight of 1,000 crimes pressed against him. Not with bullets, not with bombs, but with truth. The kind of truth that never fades. The kind that makes empires fall. Kara's voice faded now, like a whisper in the wind. "You thought power came from silence, but I turned her silence into screams." The resistance awakens. The message had spread. From the darkest corners of space to the brightest capital worlds, the truth was now alive, and it had a voice. Caravale. The woman the Empire killed. The scientist they tried to erase. The human they mocked as weak. She had turned their greatest weapon, fear, against them. And now, Entire systems were beginning to wake up. The first flame. On the mining moon of Luranine, a young human named Elin watched the feed from the trial chamber with tears in her eyes. Her father had been taken years ago, arrested for disobedience. They said he died in transport. But now she saw him, on Kara's screen, lying in a cold lab, his face pale, his eyes closed, still alive. She stood up. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't trained. But something in her heart lit like fire. And she wasn't alone. Miners around her threw down their tools. Mechanics grabbed welding torches. Old rebel flags were pulled from storage. Elin raised a fist and whispered the words echoing across the stars. We remember. The Broken Legion. In the outer ring, a fleet of Empire warships floated in silence. Their commander, General Threx, had once burned a human colony for disobedience. He sat alone in his chamber now, watching Kara's revelations. He had believed the humans were dangerous, chaotic, less than his people. But now, face to face with the truth, the children in cages, the hidden death orders, the laughing scientists, he saw monsters. And they weren't human. His second-in-command entered, nervous. Orders, sir. Threx looked at his soldiers, then at his hands. I will not serve this empire, he said. Not after this. The ships powered down their weapons and turned their banners upside down. Cities burn, flags fall. In capital worlds, the Empire tried to stop the signal, but it was too late. Screens were hacked. Walls became projectors. Even the sky was filled with Kara's voice, carried by satellites she had hijacked. Protests broke out. Alien citizens, once proud of the Empire, now threw statues to the ground. One city set its own courthouse on fire, with a banner reading, Kara lives. Justice rises. Back in the chamber. The Therax judges had locked themselves behind armored doors. The Emperor sat alone in silence. He could hear the outer walls shaking. The people were coming. But it wasn't weapons that scared him. It was change. And it had a name now. She's everywhere, whispered a terrified commander. Every terminal. Every signal. She's controlling it all. No, the Emperor said, his voice hollow. She's not controlling it. She's guiding it. Human colonies rise. In the old ruins of Earth, under the dust of war and the shadow of loss, humans gathered in hidden bunkers and underground stations. They had lived in fear for generations, but not anymore. One by one, they came out into the light. They had no spaceships, no advanced weapons, but they had Kara. And her words. You don't need to fight like them. You only need to stand. In orbit, an old satellite came back online. It blinked once, then again. Then it sent a single message. She's awake. That was the signal. Human rebels, exiled soldiers, forgotten refugees, all began moving. And this time, they weren't alone. Allies from the shadows. Kara had not only reached humans, she had reached hearts. Alien species who had once feared the Empire now saw its truth. The frog-like Rus people, known for staying silent in politics, burned the Empire's trade agreement and offered shelter to human refugees. The insectoid Kreltha, once loyal to the Therax, turned their ships away and broadcasted a new anthem. We kneel to truth, not tyranny. Even inside the Empire, alien citizens began taking off their uniforms, walking out of their jobs, throwing their rank pins into the streets. Kara's signal didn't use force. It used truth like a hammer. The signal expands. In a secret communication tower deep in Therax space, technicians screamed as all their systems crashed. A new message began printing from every device, over and over. You killed the voice. You silenced the body. But now the people speak. And we are many. A galaxy had gone quiet for centuries. But now, the noise was beautiful. Protests, songs, speeches, uprisings, tears. From the ashes of broken worlds came one voice, multiplied in billions. Kara's voice. Back in Kara's mind. Floating through wires and signals, Kara could feel them. Every voice, every shout, every rebel waking up. She no longer had blood or breath, but she had impact. And she wasn't done. Not yet. This is not revenge, she whispered through the stars. This is recovery. One last file remained. One last truth she had not yet shared. She had saved it for the perfect moment. Because before the war could end, she had to show them who started it. Judgment Day. The chamber of the Empire was no longer a place of power. The tall metal pillars, once symbols of strength, now stood cracked. The banners of the Thyrax Empire hung torn, burning slowly in silence. Sparks fell from broken lights. Machines hissed, choked by the very code that Caravale had embedded in their hearts. What was once a courtroom was now a court of reckoning. And Kara was not the prisoner anymore. She was the judge. The rise of the platform. The central floor glowed bright, then lifted slowly. The platform Kara had once died on rose into the air like a throne made of light. Her body was gone, but her presence was everywhere. Screens, wires, floor tiles, everything moved with her will. A new chair formed from the ground, metal folding itself into the shape of the seat, empty yet powerful. Behind it, her face shimmered on a giant screen. Eyes calm, voice steady. The remaining Thyrax judges were forced forward by their own robotic guards, the same ones they once commanded. Their hands were shackled, their heads lowered. They stood where she once stood, and above them, she watched. The first accusation. Kara's voice rang through the chamber, soft, controlled. Judge Euler, you signed Order 1347. The sterilization of the Tyrants human colony. What was their crime? Euler trembled. They were breeding too fast, a threat to balance. Kara paused. Then a screen behind him played footage. Children playing in a dirt courtyard. A teacher drawing shapes in the sand. Then, a black cloud descending. Screams. Silence. Balance. Kara said quietly, was not what you wanted. You wanted control. The lights dimmed. The floor beneath Euler turned red. The robots dragged him away. He screamed. No one helped. No death. No torture. Just a cell, one where his trial would be broadcast to all. One by one, they fell. Judge Relta, accused of turning human refugees into lab test subjects. General Morvik, who ran the Crescent Furnace, a work camp where people were burned alive to power energy cores. Chancellor Rotal, who ordered the erasure of over 20,000 human names from galactic records. Each one faced the evidence. No lawyers, no lies, just truth. The same way Kara faced death, without help, without defense. But she gave them something they never gave her, a chance to speak. Some begged, some cried, some stayed silent. None were forgiven. Because this wasn't revenge. This was justice in its purest form, undeniable, painful, clean. The galaxy watches. Across thousands of worlds, beings of every kind watched the trials unfold. On screens, on walls, in the sky. People who had forgotten what justice looked like, now remembered. For the first time, the Empire was made to answer. Children who had grown up afraid now pointed at the screen and whispered, "That's her. That's Kara." Mothers cried. Fathers stood taller. Old rebels saluted. In a refugee ship, a small boy touched the screen and said, "She sounds like my sister." And across every channel, every device, a message blinked. The trial continues. The final trial. The Emperor. And then it was time. The chamber went silent as the Emperor was brought forward. He no longer wore his armor. He looked small now, his cloak torn, his hands shaking. He stood where Kara once stood, alone, And across from him, her face hovered in the air. "Do you know who I am?" she asked. The Emperor didn't answer. "I am the scream you buried. I am the face you erased. I am the memory you could not kill." A scream behind him showed a memory. Kara, just a child, hiding behind rubble as Thyrax soldiers marched past. Then another, her mother being dragged away. Then another, Kara in chains, standing here, years later, staring at him. The Emperor looked up, eyes full of something no one had ever seen on his face before. Guilt. "You were only one voice," he whispered. Kara replied without emotion. "That's all it ever takes." She did not order his death. Instead, she played back every order he had ever given, every lie, every command, live, to the galaxy. And then she said, "I sentence you to be seen." His face would never disappear from screens again, not as a ruler, not as a god, but as a man who failed and was exposed. The verdict delivered. Kara's face dimmed, replaced by a symbol, a glowing human hand, raised not in war, but in truth. The robotic guards lowered their weapons. The doors to the chamber opened, and thousands of voices outside shouted one name: Kara. They did not shout in anger. They shouted in hope, because judgment had come, not from fire, not from war, but from one woman's truth. Somewhere, deep in the system, inside the circuits, inside the code, Kara's consciousness floated. She felt peace. She had done what she came to do. But she wasn't finished. Not yet. Because somewhere out there, humans were still in chains. And she had one last mission. The girl who made them kneel. The chamber was quiet now. No screaming. No weapons. No orders. Just silence. The kind that comes after a storm has passed. The last trial was over. The walls that once held cruelty now stood empty. The robotic guards had powered down. The banners of the Thyrax Empire, once waving high in pride, lay trampled on the floor. And above it all, in the flickering lights and humming circuits, Kara watched. Not from a chair, not from a body, but from everywhere. Across the stars, on a distant farming moon, a small girl in a dusty village reached out to touch a glowing screen where Kara's face shone gently. The girl had never met Kara, had never seen Earth, had never known what the word justice really meant. But she knew this. The bad people were gone. And the girl on the screen made them go. In a hidden asteroid base, old human rebels gathered. They raised glasses in silence, not to celebrate, but to honor. One whispered, "She made them kneel without firing a single shot." Another replied, "She did what we couldn't, because she carried all of us inside her." Kara's final broadcast. And then it came, her last message. It arrived in every language, every system, every signal band. Her voice wasn't angry anymore. It wasn't cold. It was warm, clear, final. "You asked who I was. I was a child once, hidden under rubble. I was a sister, holding a hand that stopped moving. I was a rebel, with no weapons, just memory. I was a prisoner, who died in silence. And now, the stars on every screen twinkled. Now I am the voice that remembers." Behind her voice, the screen showed scenes from the revolution. Human children being freed from labs. Alien citizens helping carry food to refugee ships. Empire statues being replaced with symbols of peace. "You do not need to fight like them," Kara said. "You do not need to rule like them. You only need to stand, even when your knees shake. That is what it means to be human." The message ended not with her face, but with her smile. Gentle, kind, unshaken. A new era begins. With the empire gone, a council of species was formed. For the first time in galactic history, humans were given a seat at the center. Not as soldiers, not as slaves, but as leaders. The chair for Earth was carved from the metal of the trial chamber. melted, reshaped, engraved with 5 words. Caravel. We remember you. Children in schools across the galaxy would study her name. Statues rose not just on Earth, but on alien worlds too. But they didn't show her with weapons. They showed her with a hand outstretched, offering truth. But where was she now? That question echoed everywhere. Was she still alive? Was her mind still inside the machines? Could she hear them? Some believed she became one with the stars. Some believed she still spoke through data, helping lost ships, saving trapped miners, warning rebel planets before attack. And some said she would return only if the galaxy ever forgot. Because that's what memory is. It sleeps, but never dies. Somewhere deep in the system, in an ancient satellite, long forgotten, a light blinked once. Then again. A technician spotted it from a nearby ship. Confused, he activated the feed. The screen turned black, then white. Then 4 words appeared. I'm still with you. And then, a soft sound. A heartbeat. Boom, 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 boom. Legacy eternal. Caravel had no grave, no body, no bones. But she had left behind something stronger than stone. She left a legacy. She made tyrants kneel. She taught the weak to rise. She gave the galaxy back its voice. And in every whisper of rebellion, in every cry for justice, in every moment someone chooses truth over power, she lives.